This podcast comes to you from the PlasticHeal project, exploring micro and nanoplastic effects on human health. I'm Virginia Mata, Communication Officer of the PlasticHeal project. Joining me is Julia Catalán, Senior Researcher at the Finnish Institute of Occupational Health and leader of the Work Package 2, dedicated to the human biomonitoring studies. And Pablo Pelegrín, researcher at the University of Murcia and the Murcian Institute of Biosanitary Research. He leads the work package aimed at studying the impact of micro and nanoplastics on the immune system. Julia and Pablo, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for the invitation.
So let's start discovering more about the biomonitoring studies in PlasticHeal. Julia, what are you collecting and what will it be useful for?
The aim of our work package consists on collecting data on human about what is the internal exposure to the micro and nanoplastics, as well as detection of some biomarkers of early health effect that may have an impact in the future if there is a long exposure to these materials. Micro and nanoplastic are so ubiquitous in the environment that all of us are exposed to them. So in this project, we have focused or tried to focus on populations that may be overexposed to them because they are more in contact with this material. In that sense, we are focusing on occupational exposed populations. And more specifically, the studies we do in Finland and also collecting samples in some companies in Spain are focused on two areas: workers of the companies that deal with the recycling of plastics, and also workers of companies that are manufacturing plastic fibers. The information we aim to get, as I described, is to have an idea of the levels of the exposure, that is, the levels that these materials appear in different human samples or tissues, and also if they cause some biological effects.
Is this the same in the case of Spain, coordinated by Pablo as well?
Well, in our case, in the southeast of Spain, we have a lot of greenhouses to produce fruit and vegetables, and we are going to monitor people, workers working in these greenhouses. And all these greenhouses are plastic covered, so the heat, the sun exposure make these plastics to be decomposed, and these workers are continually exposed to these residues. So we are going to extend the studies in Finland to this type of workers, and we will also give another cohort of patients more clinically relevant. They are not exposed by their occupation. They have chronic kidney disease, so they need to be exposed to dialysis every 2 days. So we are going to collect blood from these patients, and we are going to specifically look for the micro and nanoplastics contaminants in the blood of these patients.
So in one case, we're talking about maybe overexposed people, and on the other case, we are talking about people with chronic diseases that could be related to a more prone exposure to micro nanoplastics. Is it right?
Yes, exactly. And specifically in the clinical environment, many plastics objects are used for this dialysis. So they are somehow also exposed to a lot of plastic components.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the importance of this kind of studies. By the beginning of the project, PlasticHeal, a couple of years ago, there was no evidence of human biomonitoring studies involving micro nanoplastics conducted. How is the status of these kind of studies nowadays?
As far as we know, there is maybe 2 or 3 publications that have appeared after PlasticHeal started. Most of them are related to the general population, and they have detected the plastics in blood, in sputum, or in exhaled breath condensate samples. But so far, this is all the studies that we know. And the main aim of these studies has focused on the development of the techniques to characterize this material, because this is one of the challenges that we are also trying to face. But there has not been like systematically biomonitoring studies comparing different populations to see whether there is a difference in the levels of plastics in the samples, or, as I mentioned before, whether there is some kind of health effects that could be related to this exposure, at least to the best of my knowledge.
So in the work that you are performing right now, collecting the human samples and analyzing them, how is it connected to the work developed by the other teams involved in PlasticHeal, Pablo?
Well, we are connected in different ways with other teams. By one hand, we are going to use these biomonitoring samples to validate the mechanism of action of micro nanoplastics that has been found in vitro studies in other working packages. And also, we are going to check surrogate biomarkers of this micro nanoplastic that can be also identified in vitro experiments. Also, we will work to identify other contaminants that micro nanoplastic can carry, such as metals or microorganisms that could enhance the response of these micro nanoplastics.
We are also in another work package, our colleagues, they are doing what is called exposure assessment, meaning detection of the level of micro nanoplastics in the air, in the environment. And these studies are going to be done in parallel with the biomonitoring studies, so approaching the same companies. So we will know what is the external exposure that the workers are exposed to, and we can correlate the external measurements with the internal measurements that we will analyze in the human samples. And all this information will be really useful for the risk assessment that, together with the mechanistic information that Pablo referred to, could give a comprehensive understanding not only of the potential health effects, but also the mechanisms that are causing these effects.
So Julia mentioned before some challenges that you are trying to overcome. Has it been difficult to gather this kind of samples?
Well, one challenge that is in fact one of the objectives, not only of PlasticHeal, but all the projects that are studying micro nanoplastic, is the characterization of these materials, both in environmental matrices, but also in human samples, or in the cellular or in vivo studies. And then regarding the campaigns, from our side, we have had problems to convince the companies to participate, because I guess that the social pressure about the plastic is so high that they are a bit afraid what could be the consequences if we found plastics there, even if, as I say, they are around us. So it's nothing, but there is somehow plastic, micro nanoplastic nowadays have like a bit bad reputation. And then even for the companies that are really willing to collaborate, we have also some problems to convince the worker to provide the samples.
Yes, I mean, the main challenges from our side is the collection of samples that sometimes is difficult to enroll the right donors and patients. And sometimes, as Julia says, there are reluctancy from the workers and from the companies. So this is one of the main challenges we are facing. We also face changes that are over our control, because climate changes, specifically in the southeast of Spain, that is our area, is resulting in an increased temperature. And now every time less greenhouses are mounted, because greenhouses are used to keep the warm temperature inside of the greenhouse and to be able to grow the culture. But for example, this spring we have so high temperatures that we were facing that very few greenhouses are still around. And that's why we postpone the collection of samples for next autumn winter. That is the coolest time in this area, and hopefully they will place new greenhouses. So we were able to collect samples from this.
Well, this is an unexpected setback. It brings to mind the changes caused by mankind itself in nature, which is precisely the origin of PlasticHeal's research, if one thinks about it. I hope you will be able to carry out the studies in time to share the results with us soon. I want to thank you, Julia and Pablo, again, once more for participating and being here. And well, let's see if we can hear soon any more news about the human studies and the results.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
The PlasticHeal project has received funding from the European Union's Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Programme. For further information about the project and to find out much more about the results and findings of PlasticHeal research, please visit our website at www.plasticheal.eu. You will also find us on social networks at Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn.